Writer in Conversation Lunchtime series. I am Imara Savage, and I'm talking today to Angus Cerini, who I will introduce properly in a second, writer, performer, director, theatre maker extraordinaire. But before we start, I just want to acknowledge that I'm coming to you today from Gadigal and Bidjigal land, and I want to acknowledge elders past, present and future, and also extend a welcome to any First Nations people that might be tuning in today. So, Angus, hello.
Hello.
Angus, I feel very lucky to have got Angus because he's usually on a farm and is kind of hard to get in touch with. So he's coming to us today. From where are you at the moment, Angus?
I'm in Melbourne.
And your farm is?
It's in the Strathbogie Ranges, Tongarong country, and it's beautiful. I'm surrounded by nothing much except nature. But you're right. You struck lucky. I had to come to Melbourne and.
I struck lucky, so I've got him and we've got reception, and I'm so excited to be able to talk to him because I have been a fan of Angus's, which I will go into in a second. But first of all, to introduce you, so Angus's plays have been produced everywhere. He's been a performance maker for the last 20 years or so. He's had performances at Sydney Theatre Company, Melbourne Theatre Company, Griffin Theatre Company, Malthouse Theatre, Arena Theatre Company, and very widely within the independent sector. He has won the Victorian Premier's Literary Award twice, and has won the New South Wales Premier Literary Award, Helpmann Award for Best Play, an AWGIE Award for Best Play, Sydney Theatre Award for Best Play, multiple Green Room Awards, Patrick White Award, the Griffin Playwrights Prize, the David Williamson Prize, the R.E. Ross Trust Awards, and has received multiple nominations on top of that. He's also created theatre projects that have toured through his own company, toured separate to his own company and within his own company, Double Tap, which has gone to Ireland, England, Hong Kong and Germany and throughout Australia. So fairly impressive, Angus. You've been busy. I'm
exhausted just hearing it. Yeah.
You're very busy in your theatre making career. So I suppose where I want to start, well, first of all, I'd like to say that Angus, and I know you don't remember this, but about 10 years ago or so, I was a lowly assistant director at Sydney Theatre Company, and they were putting on a group of, they brought in a bunch of playwrights, of which you were one, and there was a piece called Money Shots, which was, I think, six short plays or pieces by playwrights that the company were kind of wanting to work with. And your piece was directed by Sarah Giles, and your piece was at the end of the program, and it was a monologue performed by an actor called Cameron Goodall. And you might not remember this, but I remember it very well because I was sitting in the audience watching it, and I walked out after the show and I said to Sarah Giles, who is that writer? That was freaking amazing. And it was just this experience. It was a monologue. I can't even remember what it was about. I just remember having this very visceral response to it because it was so kind of physical. It was completely still, actually. He didn't move at all, but it was physical, and the language had this muscularity and this poetry, and it had this kind of weird Beckettian kind of feel to it. And it just felt to me like, often I'm thinking like, why is theatre different to TV or film? And I just was like, oh, that's why. This is the kind of work that is theatre to me, do you know? And so that was my first experience of you. And then I was asked to come on board this Alice in Wonderland rewrite thing. And they said, who do you want to work with? And I said, Angus Cerini. And neither of us ended up doing the project, but that's how I first came into contact with your work.
Right. And I pulled out of that Alice in Wonderland thing because I realised at that point in my life, it wasn't right for me.
Yeah, that's right. And I think I was the same thing. We were both feeling like it might have been this twisted, dark thing, and actually it ended up.
Yeah, and I feel like if there's anything I've learned, it's to sort of, if it's not right, don't try and force yourself. Sometimes it's not going to be not right for you, and don't do it.
And did you know that from the beginning of your
No,
project?
I didn't. But then, and I've done other projects where I haven't said no and withdrawn, and I should have, right? And when you don't, you can do some really,
So let me ask, I mean, we're just jumping around a bit, but I just will start here. This idea of starting to say no to things. Like at what point in your career, talk me through, because we all know now, in Sydney at least, that Bleeding Tree and Wonnangatta were these incredible pieces that arrived to the stage. They were, universally kind of acclaimed pieces. But before that, you had this whole career as an independent artist, as a solo maker, as a theatre maker, director, writer. So what has that career, how did it start for you, and to get to this place where you have, this piece on at the Ros Packer with Wayne Blair and Hugo Weaving?
Yeah, right. Like what's that about? So I went to finished high school and went to Monash Uni and started an arts degree, but just that didn't work. So I worked in a restaurant. And 3 years later, I thought, I'm going to be a painter, right? So I ended up at the VCA. There was this 6th school, which was this School of Studies in Creative Arts. And it was fantastic. So I was doing painting, then started doing a few plays, and then thought, hey, I'm going to be an actor, right? So I'm going to do all these plays, and no one's casting me. So I'm going to write my own play, and they'll see that I'm an actor.
So hang on one second. I'm just going to stop you, Angus. So when you started the first, the arts degree, what were you studying in the arts degree?
I was studying, so in high school, my best marks were economics and legal studies. My worst mark was English, right?
Wow.
Year 12, I got C for English, and I got high 90% for economics and legal studies. So I wanted to get into business and sort of maybe law ultimately or something. I don't know, right? Yeah. But that just didn't work. And so that's...
So then painting was something you were already doing, or you just...
Oh, well, I just finished year 12 and I was like, well, I got into an arts degree. I'll just go and do that. And I didn't really want to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you're 18. Do you really know what you want to do when you're 18? Or maybe you do at the time.
But at least you knew fairly quickly. I did a 5-year degree and didn't realise it until the end.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's good. My brother did a science degree, the whole thing, got to his final exams and just never went to the exams. And I'm like, hey, a good way to get a massive HECS debt with no degree.
But it's interesting to me because I think when we look at artists that are successful, and you are one of those artists, I think often I look at these people and I think, has your trajectory always been this? Have you been working towards it the whole time? But it sounds like, so you go off doing legal studies and economics, and then you come to do painting and you fall into this theatre crowd. Yeah.
And then I wrote a play. Can I just going back a bit? Is it Rosalie Gascoigne? Was that the Australian painter? She was in her 60s or something. I think that's the painter. She would do assemblages. So she had a whole career and a whole life. Came to visual art very late in her life. I think it's Rosalie Gascoigne. I could be completely wrong. So yeah, I think everyone's journey is going to be interesting. But yeah. So I went to uni to be a painter. Ended up as a playwright via being an actor.
And how did you figure out you could write? Or where was the want to write? Where?
Well, I kept sort of meeting interesting people, and so that course with that degree was called a Bachelor of Visual and Performing Arts originally. Then it became a Bachelor of Creative Arts, and the idea was that it was a fantastic course. It was a half theory, half practical degree, and you would each year do 2 subjects in visual art, 2 in performing arts, 2 in writing. So it was spread across all these sort of art forms, and then you would narrow as you went. So I don't remember your question, but it was...
just how you came to write that first play. How did you know you could write, and how did it come about?
I got told really crazy stories. I was living in a really strange environment at the time, in a weird share house in the suburbs. And one day, a guy, one of my housemates' old friends from high school, turned up, and he sort of... Anyway, there was all these stories of violence that I then wrote. And the first play I wrote was called Recidivist, and it was a short piece, and it was 3 short monologues. And recidivist is a legal term, which I knew all about because I did really good at legal studies. And it was repeat offender, right? So, and it was essentially 3 monologues about... It was a dramatized version of this one dude's true story about his violent father. And it was the first one was started when I was little, we hid behind the couch. And then the second monologue was when I was 13, he hit me. And then the third one was when I was 16, he hit me once, then I clocked him hard. And it was sort of this progression, and it was this short, and I was at uni with Lally Katz, an amazing Australian playwright, and her play, I think it was called The Fly or The Moth. The Fly was performed the week before, and we were part of this short work season called Muddy Shorts, which was Mudfest, which was Melbourne Uni's arts festival. So, so universities have those. Yeah, so that's where I had my first thing. I think it was in 1997, which is a really long time ago.
And was that a piece that you wrote for yourself?
Yes.
Yes. So were you in all three of these? Yeah,
because it was I think it was only like a 15-minute play. Like it was little. It was a short piece. And so maybe not even that. Maybe it was 10 minutes, actually. It was sort of, so there were these 3 monologues, and I would have just done a blackout between each one. So
were you also directing that?
Yeah.
I'm interested, like, because as a solo artist, like when you write and you're writing for yourself to perform in, and you're also a visual artist, or you've come from a visual arts place too, and a dancer because you study ballet. Like, are you visualizing the world of the stage craft as you're writing?
Well, that's interesting. I think it's changed. I think some of the work I made a lot of solo shows over the years, and a lot of that was because you don't need anyone else. You can kind of make your work. You don't need to rely on anyone, really, like when you're making it, you can do it all yourself, like assuming you're not going to have amazing lights and costumes, etc. Right? So the core of it, you can do with no money in any place you're at, without needing anyone or anything. And some of the work I'm most proud of, I'm built like that. So it was small and true and clean and like discreet. But some of the worst, like embarrassing sort of stuff was that sort of work, because you don't have anyone there saying, hey, that's really stupid. Don't do that. You look ridiculous. Like, that's inappropriate. You can't say that. And why? No, that's dumb. So I feel...
And have you had those works, like those embarrassing works?
Yeah.
I feel like I don't know if you have.
Yeah. And one of my dearest colleagues, friends, peers, mentors, Susie D, I did this show in 2000 called Filch, and it was a solo, and it went really well, right? It was really good. And then the next year I did another show called Smash Brat, and it was bad. And people are going, oh yeah, you're great, Angus. And I was thinking, no, it's awful. I was dying, right? So it's this, I've done this show in the Fringe, and it's awful. I was just cringing. I hated my life, but I had to keep going. And Susie D, she'd seen the show the previous year, the show called Filch, and she was like, oh my God, come on, yeah, this is good. But this year, all the audience go, yeah, well done. Susie walks up to me after the show one night. She goes, what are you doing? What are you doing out there? What is that? What are you doing? And I go, help. And you go, yeah, you need help. I go, help me, Susie. She goes, yeah, I'll help you. You need my help, right? Which was in 2001, and we've worked together ever since. And so, right. So I feel like in a large part, it's meeting Susie D was, and there've been other people along the way, but Susie D was kind of the point where you meet your artistic soul, your dearest, right? And
and the great thing about those people are you need them, don't you? Because they're the only people that will be kind and honest to you.
Yeah, right. And it's like you want that honest. You want them to tell you when you are appalling.
Yeah, but particularly if it's like, I mean, I've got people like that I bring along to kind of check in on things, but particularly if you're the performer in it. I mean, that's a whole nother level, isn't it?
Yeah.
So do you have those people now that in these, well, I don't know, when is it the last time you did a solo show?
Would have been 2015, Resplendence.
Yeah.
Sorry,
you continue, yeah.
I know that was a group. I was surrounded by colleagues that I'd worked with a lot over the years on mini shows, and including Susie and Kelly Ryle and Mark Horwell, and there was a whole little gang of us. Jethro Woodward on that show, but it was like there's a little cohort of trust and your little gang that they'll be honest, and you make it work together. So now but solo shows are hard. So they're lonely, right?
Is that something that's still part of you, what you're doing, or if you've moved on to, because it feels like, and I know I'm jumping around here, but it feels like now you've started writing plays
Yeah,
that are put on by other people. Do you know?
Yeah.
I'm interested in your experience with that too, from somebody who's had kind of almost total control over something to somebody
yeah. Well, right. So, I mean, back in 1997, my second play was, well, the second thing I ever did was a play, and it was called Dennis is Dead. And that was 4 actors, and I directed it, right? So,
and were you in it?
No.
Yeah.
No, but so that's a different process where you write it and you sort of you're controlling it. But you're right. So now I'm in this place where I'm writing the plays, and you kind of hand them over. And
so this is with Bleeding Tree and Wonnangatta.
Yeah.
That were written, you knew that you weren't performing in them, and they were directed by people that weren't long-time collaborators.
Totally right. And there have been other plays over the years with a similar situation. And yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. But it's I've seen, when you see, it's pretty gratifying when you see something you've written that you might have like crafted, like Resplendence. I saw a production of that in Sydney, and it was very gratifying to see that the play worked, like the script worked as a play for me. And I was sort of, it's very gratifying, and I was quite proud to go, wow, I had nothing to do with this production, but the play still sort of works.
And was it different, like that Resplendence, the one that you saw in Sydney, was it radically different to other versions of it that you?
Yeah, it was. What
were the differences? This just interests me, because I often feel like when you get a play, often people say to me, have you called the playwright to figure out what they're trying to do there, if they're alive, and I'm like, no way. I'm too in awe of playwrights to be able to
be in awe of playwrights.
talk to them. But I'm just interested, because really that's the thing, isn't it? You give them these scripts and people can interpret them in any way. So
totally.
How has it been different?
I don't know. Well, maybe that was why I was sort of, with that particular instance, I was really gratified, because this isn't how I would do this production. Like, it was a bare bones sort of production, but it was the play worked. So the structure, the story, like the arc of it, like the way the piece sat in the world, succeeded. So bits of the script I would have cut and changed words and maybe pulled out half a page here and there, etc. But generally the play succeeded as a piece of writing when I had nothing at all to do with it, and that was pretty great, because I'd spent my money to fly up to Sydney to kind of sneak in and see this little play, right? So it was quite, yeah. So that was a bit of a, it's quite.
Did they know you were going to be the playwright?
Yeah. It was James O'Connell performed it, and it was at, what's that pub theatre in Sydney near the up, is it the Old Fitz?
Yeah,
up the hill from the pie cart, right?
Yeah.
Harry, So it was in there, and it's also a bit of a thrill, right? When people want to do your play.
Of course.
It's really, and you really want, I don't know, it's quite, I don't know, you know what I mean? It's quite nice. It's a, yeah.
I think like your writing for me, so for people who do know Angus's work or don't know it, the experience on the page is like, when I first left NIDA, the writers that I was really drawn to were people like, I don't know if you know Terrell Alvin McCraney, who is a writer from the States. So there was Debbie Tucker Green in the UK. Even people like Carol Churchill or Beckett, or even Ted Hughes' kind of, translation of Oedipus at the very beginning, the kind of chorus, this is kind of incredible monologue. And so I was really drawn to these works where I didn't even know it at the time, but I suppose on the page, kind of everything is on the page. Right. But there are no stage directions. There's no kind of in between. It doesn't tell you the psychology behind people. It's kind of all in the language, and the page itself is very blank, but then you look at the language and it's so kind of intricately constructed. And even when you were talking about recidivist, you started speaking some lines from that. And I was like, is that always how you wrote, in this very muscular, poetic style? And where did that come from?
Where I think that comes from, I think, is character, right? I think with recidivist, if we go right back to that, the play was, he talked about the purple, and it was a purple couch. And I think the first monologue was like, when I was little, we stayed at Nan's, and then blah, 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 and we hid behind the purple. We could hear his car in the driveway. And then like the next one was like, when I was 13, he hit I don't know, but essentially I was playing that character through 3 ages of his life. I just guess I was speaking the truth of his experience, and so I think I just channeled a character who was telling us his story. And I think,
and as you're writing it, I mean, in this case, you're dealing with children too, I suppose. So you're looking at that kind of point of view of a child and their initial monologue.
Yeah.
As you're writing it, are you reading it and kind of speaking?
That's totally the thing. When you were talking before about there's no stage directions or something, I think the trick, it's I love that, because what it's saying is what you need to do is say it out loud, and then if you speak it, it'll become evident that I mean, you know, you can write, if you give stage directions, what you're saying to a director is, I'm controlling your production.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, do you really want to control what a director might bring to your work? Like, sure, good, do it. You can, right?
No, but I think that's why I was drawn to your writing and the writing of these other playwrights I mentioned, is that as a director, you feel like they've really left a whole space open for you.
Well, isn't that good, right? Like, I feel like it's, because then, I mean, there's nothing better, than working with a collaborator, a director, and having that dialogue where they're coming up with the staging and the setting and the blah, blah, blah. And it's great when you get that real close. So they're directing it how you would love it anyway, but they get the freedom to direct, right? I've got the freedom to write. Well, I should let you, the director, have the freedom to bring it to life. And if I want it to be a certain way, then I'll direct it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And be in it. It's interesting because, like, you know, like you say that you're writing from the point of view of the character, and that's how that language comes out. But it still is quite heightened in terms of the language, you know. And it's not. I mean, it's not like dissimilar to Shakespeare or something, in that, like, it feels like there's real rhythms at play, and it feels like everything is in the language. Do you know?
Yeah.
And so, like, have you been influenced by poetry or spoken word, or is this just the kind of character coming through? I mean, I'm just really interested about the construction of, like, words on a page.
That's interesting. It was sort of I did ballet as a child for 10 years. I did a lot of ballet, and I think so. I grew up do a lot of ballet concerts. And every September holidays, I was part of this thing called Young Dancers Theatre, or children's dance. It was YDT, and we'd do these big productions from all these ballet schools. We'd rehearse all through the year, and it'd be things like Peter and the Wolf, or the Nutcracker Suite, or Cinderella. These sort of classical ballet stories, right? And these ballets have orchestral scores, these so big musical scores, and so there's a story, right? The Nutcracker, it's the story of this Nutcracker that gets bought at Christmas, and then at night this crazy other Nutcracker comes alive, and like, I think, and so it's sort of, I grew up in a world, like, my whole childhood up till the age of 16, between 6 and 16, was doing all this dance theatre, ballet, and when these thousands of kids had come 2 shows a day through the September holidays, and we'd dance these big ballets with big costumes, and proper lighting and set designers and costume designers were involved, right? So this big, beautiful, magnificent sort of experience for everyone dancing, all of us kids dancing, and the kids that would come, right? But so you don't need in that setting the Nutcracker Suite. You don't need someone talking. You get the story because you see this Nutcracker coming out. He's dressed as a Nutcracker, and then whatever he's doing, if he starts eating a Mars bar, then you're going, well, the Nutcracker's eating a Mars bar. Not that he's eating a Mars bar, but so you don't need words. And so I go, well, if you're in the theatre, you need words. And if you go and see dance, you don't need words, and you can feel something and get a meaning.
That's interesting, because I was only introduced to ballet, like, really, like, only like a couple of years ago. Do you know, a friend of mine was choreographing something for Australian Ballet, and I came on as a dramaturg, and I said to him, like, I was like, but what is ballet? Like, I didn't really understand, like, and then we were in rehearsal one day, and I said, oh, it's like mime. It's like mime storytelling, do you know? And it is, the economy of storytelling is kind of incredible, isn't it? You know?
Yeah. Well, it's also like highly political, classical ballet, because it's a French art form. Then the British took it up, like the Royal Academy of Dance. But you notice the Chinese are very big on dance, and so are the Russians. So in geopolitical terms, classical ballet is a kind of, I mean, I could be completely wrong. I might have got it all muddled up, but it's not mime. Dance is not.
I was like, but the storytelling is like, they were showing me all these gestures, that this gesture means this, and this gesture means this.
Right.
Sadness, or it means happy, or goodbye, or
It's sort of wild. Classical ballet is wild. I haven't been to a ballet concert in years and years. But
I just, we're both in the theatre business, but I think partly, I think if I could have my life again, it would have probably been danced, because there's something I find often with theatre, I think I find everything spoken, a bit what you're saying, everything is spoken, everything is said. And instead of, in terms of the visual arts world, or kind of contemporary art or installation or dance, I find that there's more room for the viewer to sit in the space, No,
I agree, right? And it's not telling me
truths.
Right. Well, I get to come up with what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
I think with my theatre, I'm trying to create, I don't know, it's the words themselves are enjoyable, not just what they're saying.
Well, it's a couple of things. I want to go back to the fairy tale thing, but before that, just the words thing again. I remember reading at the beginning of one of your plays, I think it was Wretch or something. It says, there's a note to performers, and it says, if you get stuck or whatever, just go back to the language and let the language guide the performance, and that's kind of interesting in a world where Stanislavski is the go-to for actors in terms of methodology, it kind of comes from this psychological place, whereas this feels to me more like Shakespeare or Beckett, or even dance, which is learning from the outside and letting that affect the psychology.
Yeah, right. Well, no, that's interesting. I feel like I just want to say one thing. I'd remove that note now from the start of Wretch, if that's there, which it probably is, because I feel like the less adorned with instructions and notes and lists of characters, the less there is, the more it can be interpreted and it can be moved. I mean, and I guess I got onto this thing years ago and ended up writing a kind of experimental play to experiment with the idea that I kept thinking about, you sit in the theatre, you're there, and it's this thing, and you're experiencing something, I think I don't really hear what they're saying, because what people are saying on stage often, it's just words, right? When what's really going on in their relationship is the bit that matters. So I thought, imagine if you saw someone 200 meters away talking to someone and they were being really angry. You couldn't hear them, but you'd know they were angry. And so I was like, all right, what about if I try writing a play where they're talking absolute gobbledygook, but it makes total sense? We can go, so blah, 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 blah. You get what I'm saying? And it's just words nonsense. In that sense, then the words become absolutely meaningless. What you're saying is meaningless. It's what you're communicating is the bit that matters, which I think is the dance, your body. So with Wretch, you've got to not try and act it, because the acting is not you're not going to be able to succeed if you try and imagine the character. You've got to go inside and just let the words come out, and then that character is going to be whoever's saying those words.
Yeah. No. I totally makes sense. I get it. Can we go back to Peter and the Wolf and Hansel and Gretel stuff for a minute? Because
I love that.
This is why I thought you'd be good for Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, but that was
work out.
No, but Alice in Wonderland's got a dumb story. There's no story. Have you noticed?
Well, it's the kind of, what is it? Is it a quest? No, it's not even a quest.
No, but it's a quest that doesn't end. It's weird, right? Whereas Red Riding Hood, she goes into the forest, and then there's the big bad wolf, and then there's grandma, and then the hunter comes along, end of story. It's beginning, middle, and end. It's beautiful, right? You can adapt to that. But Alice in Wonderland, you go, well,
it's then she woke up and it was all a dream. It's that.
No, stop that. I don't want that. And it's like Cinderella. It's totally a story, right? She's the derided younger sister, blah, blah, blah.
So what is the influence of like these fairy, because I feel like when I listen to your work, I can feel a fairy tale influence in there. I don't know how, but it's there. And I feel like for one of your plays, I don't know which one, was it Bleeding Tree? You were talking about Gretel, Hansel and Gretel. I'm not sure which one it was that you said that, but what's the influence been of fairy tales on your work, do you think? And was that something like, that's obviously through dance that you're kind of being exposed to all those stories?
Well, I don't know, but so I know for a fact, and when I'm the youngest of four. When I was little, my mum would take us to lots of ballet concerts and things, but because they didn't have much money, she'd go to all the free concerts, right? So we were always going to these like free artistic things, because there's often a lot of like the Sydney My Music Hall have these free concerts, right? So often mum would be there at the school gates. We'd be in the combi driving to the city at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon to get front row free seats to the Australian Ballet doing La Filmagata, you know, it's some weird like artistic thing, because mum really wanted us to be exposed to the culture, right? Bless her heart. And I remember once, and I remember standing, I was a little boy, and I stood up and I was like, he's behind you. And I was yelling out because the wolf was chasing the duck in Peter and the Wolf.
Yeah.
I've got a memory of like, of being convinced. I was a very little boy. And so I think that's where it comes from. And, you know, that you imagine being like, when you do children's theatre, they're great, aren't they? Kids, they're just, if they're bored, it's like, they're so, they're bored. Yeah, if the show's shit, right, those kids will let you know. So it's the most gratifying and terrifying thing to do children's theatre. But
have you done children's theatre? You've done.
I was in a show. I performed with Terrapin Puppet Theatre. We did a national tour of the BFG, and
great play, great book, yeah.
So and that was amazing because it was thousands of children for weeks on end. All over Australia are really enjoying this story. This is pretty colonial, kind of a weird thing where they go to tell the Queen that like the Giants are bad, and so anyway, rolled. But yeah, no, I don't have children, and I probably never will. But I've always sort of imagined, I don't know, there is something. Maybe it goes back to doing ballet and being involved, being in the theatre as a little boy, as a little child. It's something. You know, the theatre is very magical, and it's suspending disbelief, and it's just fantastic, right? And you know, we can sit at home and watch TV. We can see something on the screen that will have that effect. So, but theatre's in its own little world, and so that's why I guess I've been trying to create a theatrical play, a theatrical performance, not so much dialogue driven necessarily.
And like with your plays, often, I mean, you've written with kids in them before, like often the kind of and you did another one too. Well, the kid in a juvenile detention centre, that was Wretch, was it?
Yeah. I wrote about like 15 versions of that sort of material.
Of Wretch.
Anyway, just about Anyway, no, keep going.
No, my question was just mainly like, so, you know, like you have written for kind of younger kids too. There was the one about the young kid with his grandfather, or
Oh yes, yeah. Well, I wrote. Oh my God, yeah. Well, this is so for me. Yeah,
I'm interested in like the kind of characters that you tap into. So you're talking about, you know, this guy that came around to your share house when you're in Melbourne, and the kind of repeat offender thing, or these kind of kids that are grappling with violence in their households or sexual abuse, or you know, written pieces about homelessness, domestic violence. Like, where are these? Is it the theme that drives it? Is it the character that drives it? Where are these ideas coming from?
I think yeah, I mean, I grew up in the sort of outer ring of suburbs in Melbourne, and so I was sort of surrounded, you know, for a time there with a sort of cohort of dudes that were some sort of poverty and working class, and then I had some experiences of you know, experiencing, you know, like a criminal world of sort of anyway, I just sort of, I was intrigued. It's
the real on the margins stuff, or they're on the periphery.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like, with the world is sometimes full of such rotten stuff, right?
Mm.
And then we'll go to the theatre, and it's all like the real world of trauma and pain and poverty doesn't exist, right? And it's just like, well, it does exist. I mean, last year with JobKeeper, the Australian government solved poverty. Poverty was over, right? Then they stopped JobKeeper. Poverty is now here again, right? And you go, well, that's wrong. We have the 13th largest economy on the planet, right? We have the high. It's just sort of. So I guess. And then when I wrote The Bleeding Tree, I think what I was able to do was to channel that disgust and rage that men would beat their wives and children and get away with it. And I was able to channel it into a story where we just got rid of that filth, right? And then the audience enjoyed it.
Well, I think we enjoyed it because, like,
we all want it.
Well, yeah, well, beyond the fact that, like, you're kind of going, oh my God, I can appreciate this in terms of, like, the language and the construction and all of that stuff. Like, the thing is that they not only did they get away with killing this man, the wife and the children that had been, beating them for however many years. Not only did they get away with it, but the community supported them to cover it up, And I think, like, people were just, well, I know, speaking for myself, like, more than a woman a week, and it's like every other day in the paper there's some new story, and you start to feel this real sense of rage, I think. Probably a good word. And I feel like that at that particular time, seeing that play, it was like, oh, they got away with it, but also the community were able to step in and help them in a way that, we want them. We want people to be helped. And
my favourite bit of that play is a bit of the thing Mum says, right? So they've killed the guy because he's been abusing them, and then they're sort of helped by the Bleeding Tree, and then the last person that sort of helps them is the police officer, and Mum just says to him, because he's like, what have you done? You've killed him. And she's like, well, you knew he was hitting us. What did you do about it? Nothing. And I think we as a society go, and so when it goes talking about, like, going back a bit with Saving Henry, play about the boy and his grandfather, it was about sexual abuse of children. It's like, well, and then since then we've had the Royal Commission into Child, with the churches, etc. And you know what? And so someone like Julia Gillard, what she did with that Royal Commission, exposing that festering sore. Anyway, so I feel like our arts are very powerful, and we can. And so with The Bleeding Tree, I think I was pretty lucky with the zeitgeist at the time that I'd been working on this sort of material for many years, but in The Bleeding Tree, I managed to kind of land it in a form that at the time society wanted to hear, right?
Yeah.
And
then how do you, like, follow up that? So you've written this piece that kind of everybody's like, wow, just hit the zeitgeist. It says something really important. It's expressing a kind of collective rage at the kind of injustice that's occurring towards women and children. And then you're asked to write another play.
No, you can't. I reckon, well, this is the thing. This is what I reckon the thing is. It's like, well, how do you write, like, forgetting the material or the subject matter, how do you write a good play, right? Which is a good play is kind of, it's conflict, really, isn't it? It's characters want or need something, and there are obstacles in their way, and the obstacle is the conflict. So in The Bleeding Tree, they've killed someone and they want to get away with it, but the problem is people keep turning up to the house. So that's it just pushes itself along. And so you go, well, how do you make a good drama, a good play that's got conflict, but also meaningful? And it's hard. It's hard.
So tell me about Wonnangatta a bit, like, just to explain for people who might not have been able to see it, because it happened kind of smack bang in the middle of COVID. And it just managed to get on stage, and you just managed to get from your garlic farm to the last 3 shows. For the last 3 shows.
Yeah.
And to see Wayne Blair and Hugo Weaving in your play at the Rospacker Theatre. So amazing that you even made it from the Garlic
125 people in the theatre. That's an 800-seater.
Yes, in Mars. So tell me, like, where did this idea come from? And just explain it to us a little bit for people that might not have been able to see it. Like, what is the piece? Where did the idea come from? How did you get it from the idea to the stage?
Okay, so in 1918, there's a place in Victoria. It was one of the last places in Victoria to be surveyed by a guy called William Howard. Forget that bit. But anyway, it's in the middle of the Alpine wilderness. And there's been, in the last few years, a couple of disappearances. But back in 19, there was an isolated cattle run, a homestead, a farm called Wonnangatta Station, and it's in a place called Wonnangatta. And in 1918, the body of the station manager, Jim Barclay, was found in the creek with his head chewed off. And they're like, well, who's killed Jim Barclay? And it was his best mate who found the body. And they've gone, well, the station hand, John Bamford, he's missing. And also he's been known to be a bit of a dodgy dude. This is a true story, right? And so they go looking for John Bamford. And the true story is that John Bamford's body is found up on the high plains outside a hut with a bullet hole in his head, right? And so this is an unsolved double murder that goes back to 1918. And it's between the wars, and it's incredible countryside.
And how did you know this story existed?
Right. So when we were growing up, we had a little holiday house in a place called Jamison, which is in sort of the foothills of the Great Dividing Range in the Alps in northeast Victoria. And so we'd go there, and my dad would just go fly fishing. And we were there a lot. I guess when we weren't like going to free ballet at the My Music Bowl, we were up at the Jamison River, right, making rafts and like mucking around, right? And so that's whole Matter of Snowy River, you know, that amazing film, like brilliant, right? So I've known this sort of story of the Wonnangatta murders since, you know, my dad would have told me about it. And so, and I guess I got kind of interested in that story. Because it's bizarre. It's a bizarre story. There's a lot of really interesting stuff, such as the dog's name that was starving, that like it was at the homestead, led them to the body, and the dog's name was Baron. There was strychnine in the pepper tin, which so the search party almost got poisoned. Like all this great stuff, right? So you
started with kind of research in this case.
Yeah, and then it was just. And I loved what I'd done with the Bleeding Tree. It was started with action, right? Like I didn't like set out to do it, but as it is, the play started with like, bang, we've killed him.
Yeah,
right. So you start with the dramatic moments, like wow, and as an audience, you're like, we're in there, right? What's going on?
Yeah.
With Wonnangatta, it was like there's no one. Where is he? And so you're starting with this kind of pressing need to find out. And so
I remember reading I think it was about Brecht, and it was saying that you know, often he starts the same way because it's not about the what is going to happen, but why or how did it happen?
Right.
You know, it changes the orientation of the audience.
Like, I like that.
How did that happen? Why did it happen? Not what is going to happen.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, trying like before the Bleeding Tree, I was really just like making strange independent theatre. No, it was good. It was good stuff. It was. No, I'm not going to say. I'm going to dismiss. That was true, and I was following what I needed to say, right? And I think that's important. But then the Bleeding Tree happened, and I wasn't expecting that to happen. It was very successful, and so then it was like, well, you better write another one, and I had to write another play, and it was extremely hard. And so much. Hard?
And why was it different? So you said that you knew the story from when you were a kid. You're doing the research. I don't know if research is something you did before in your other stuff or not. But then why did this one feel harder or different?
Oh, I think it was pressure on myself. But also the story of the Wonnangatta murders. It's double murders unsolved, right? And it's like, well, how do we finish the story?
Yeah.
No, well, it was just difficult second album stuff, right?
Yeah.
because I go, well, like the powerful thing about the Bleeding Tree is I'm essentially saying, and I think the way it was received positively, society was going, yeah, we agree with you. It was essentially saying men who beat white women and children need to be killed. broadly people going, yeah, good, we agree, get rid of them, right? It's like, well, but then you go, well, what's the next important big thing society wants to agree with me on?
And was like, there politics? Was there politics in this work?
Oh, nah. Look, I've tried to do political works before, Imara, and I tell you,
yeah,
like,
so it's really the mystery. This was the mystery that
I don't know. I was trying to come up with a story, just like a cool story, right? Because I mean, story is everything, I think.
And what was it like? So, you know, COVID happened, and you didn't know whether you could get to see your own show.
Yeah, I was writing emails to ministers with photos of me with like going, "Hey, look, I've got this ute with jerry cans of fuel and a tent. I can go through the mountains, and I don't have to see anyone. Please, minister."
Did they respond to you?
Yeah, like 6 months after like the show had gone on, saying, "Hey, hope you can make it to your theatre show. Have you tried quarantining in Darwin?" Which is what I did do.
And what was it like seeing this work of yours? Like this story that you've known since you were a kid, and it's on paper and it's up on the Rospacker stage.
It was weird. It was weird because because usually what's supposed to happen is you write a play and you work with the team, in this case, Sydney Theatre Company, specifically Polly Rowe, the dramaturg, and then Jess Arthur, the director. So that's 3 of you. And then there's the design team, and then the performers, and then you sort of had the producers. Like, you're all part of this thing, and you had to go up and have developments, and it's amazing, right? It's when we make theatre, you know how it is. It's collaborative is that word we use, right? But it's oh God, it's good, and I loved it with Lee Lewis and the Bleeding Tree with Griffin, because it was one of the first times I could just be the writer, let Lee direct, and I could kind of feed in, but let Lee be the boss.
So you were in the room for the Bleeding Tree.
I was, yeah. And I love handing over. And I mean, in fact, Sarah Giles once said when we did a development, I was so like giving her what I thought. On the last day of the development, she said to me, she goes, "Hey, Angus, do you reckon today you could just go and have lots of coffee out there, right?" Which is, so you got to let the director direct, right? And so with the Bleeding Tree and Lee and Griffin, I was really satisfied with that process. I felt, I find it hard not to have an opinion and hard to shut up, but it was good to kind of sit there and be in the room, and then Lee and I. So with Wonnangatta in the lead up before COVID, I was like, yeah, Holly and Jess and STC and Hugo and Wayne. It's, this is awesome. And then I didn't get to do that bit, right? That bit where you're in the room and gently nudging and having little opinions and feeding. So you're very influential, but not in a loud way.
You turned up. Sorry, I'm just saying my little dog, his very indecisive dog. He likes to go in and out. So you turned up at this kind of a bit
left out,
like blind in a way.
Yeah, and that was. And so the thing is, what you got to do I don't know if other playwrights are like this, but you've got to. You know, this thing is for me, it's like when you do you write a play, you hand it over. And like the design, the acting, the directing, all the different parts, there'll be bits where it's just like, oh, that is just so good, right? And so like, oh my God, I love these people. Then there are other bits and you're like, oh, what have they done? This is just the worst. So for me, I've got to come to terms during the rehearsal process of going, oh my God, I love that bit, but just calm down, don't yell out yes. And then, oh my God, that bit, I hate that, don't, but just deal with it. So by opening night, you've got this like, oh yeah, all good.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the other thing I suppose is that, like, you know, an audience of 900 is different to an audience of 100 wearing masks who are all socially distant. So you don't know how to read what it is that they're seeing.
Yeah. No, it's weird. And you know what's weird? I feel like what it is, Imara, I don't know my play.
Yeah, you haven't been sitting with it as it's.
No, like I've seen it. Usually you'd see you play dozens of times. I've seen it 3 times.
Yeah.
Well,
it'll be on again. God, the dog wants to come in. I'm not letting him in.
What's wrong with the dog? What do you got against the dog?
He just has to go in and out.
Well.
Oh my God, I have to open the door. I'm sorry.
The dog.
So we've got 5 minutes left, and I'm just interested. Let me go.
Think about dogs. Dogs just are, right?
Love the dog. Look there.
Yeah. We want to see the dog. I want to see this. Come on. Oh, good day, bloke. Good day, mate.
So
Yeah,
Angus,
that's the song.
just for the last 5 minutes, I'm interested. So the last play you had on Wonnangatta, is that right?
Yeah.
Last year. And so are you able to say, like, what is your interest now? Like, what are you angry about, interested in, working on, wrestling with? Like, where are you as an artist now?
Well, that's interesting because I'm like I said before about poverty. I'm in a place, Imara, where I've got a lot of. I'm angry about a lot of things, but I'm not quite sure in entertainment terms they're worth saying and they're worth exploring. But there's no point yelling at an audience that don't want to hear it. It's far better to kind of like sit down, like with the Bleeding Tree, and have a bit of fun. So we're all on this journey together because you achieve more, right? So I think about like the Juckin Gorge, the caves in the WA, and I think about how you can a multinational mining company can destroy ancient rock formations that hold enormous cultural value, and then a couple of people resign, but it's not Rio Tinto. That's a brand. It's Rio Tinto as a board. It's 10 people. They're highly paid people. And then a few months later, you've got, and Rio Tinto have record profits. And most of our superannuation funds would have shares. And so most Australians are complicit. And I get angry about things like that. Society is sick. So audiences don't want to sit there and hear that day to day.
Yeah, but it's interesting because I suppose like what you're talking about is land, you know, and I think like land is something in this case is something that like features quite heavily in your work as a presence, you know, it's like it's almost like another character in the work. And it's interesting because it's like the plays that I've read of yours, I would say they're political, but they're not overtly political, do you know? And I think that's partly because they exist in it's not fairy tale, but they exist in a different kind of theatrical landscape.
Totally right. Yeah, because like when I sit here and rant, it's boring, it's stupid, right? Like it's true, like but it is, right? It's not enjoyable, it's not satisfying because we all agree, right? The task is to try and channel that.
But you are writing another play at the moment? No, just thinking, percolating.
I'm writing lots of like sort of garbage in this book.
Okay.
Not garbage. It's all. I'm between projects. I'm not between projects. I've got projects, but I'm just trying to fine tune what they might be.
Yeah, you're kind of fishing for your next.
Yeah, you probably read lots of things, waiting to do your next directing project. I'm kind of like writing lots of stuff and just trying to be less angry and maybe a bit more like frivolous.
Well, I think, I mean, people don't know this about Angus, but you are also growing, as well as you're growing your garlic on a farm, you're now starting to grow, what are they called?
Ranunculus.
So that it feels like it's living in a more frivolous kind of, you know, like Wizard of Oz type landscape.
Oh, no, but I mean frivolous in a way that we talk about the politics of Australia in a way that we laugh, but then leave and divest ourselves of Rio Tinto shares.
Well, I think it's interesting coming out of COVID too, in terms of like, you know, where people are at in terms of what they want to see and what they want to kind of be talking about. And it's really interesting because not only, you know, well, it's interesting because like, you know, Me Too and Black Lives Matter and the environmental kind of movement, it's like these things have all come to a head over the last few years. And at the same time, people now want to go out and also engage with other people and have fun. And you kind of think, where does this all sit in terms of the responsibility of live performance? You know?
Well, yeah, right. Because I mean, theatre is a place we go to be entertained, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like the world's had a hard trot lately. So we can either double down, but I don't want to see plays about the pandemic. I don't want to see plays about.
Well, you already wrote one anyway. You wrote one like 15 years ago.
Yeah, but I got rid of all the words. It ended up as like
no words. Yeah. Angus, this is all we have time for today. Thank you so much. I feel so lucky to talk to you. This is what I've got to do to talk to you, to get through to you, because you live on that farm. And so then I have to corner you in a meeting like this. But I've just loved talking to you, and I find your work really inspiring, and I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you. Nice to hear that, and I've enjoyed our chat today. Thank you.
All right. Good luck with the ranunculus.
Very good. Okay.
See you, Angus. Bye.
Bye.